Terkko Health Hub. But next, I have the pleasure to introduce you Pekka Pohjosaho from Innokas Medical. And next, Pekka will tell you more about the MDR Fast Track. So, Pekka, the floor is yours.
I'm actually going to jump in here. I'm joining Pekka from Innokas Medical. My name is Emmi Pesonen. I'm in the sales and marketing team and happy to support Pekka here today as the expert. And we are both hoping to give you guys some food for thought. So in my role, I've been working mostly with startups. And as I'm new to the industry, starting at Innokas only 6 months ago, I have some insight to looking things from the client's perspective. So yeah, Innokas Medical, we are a contract designer and contract manufacturer of complex electromechanical medical devices. And we've been at it for almost 3 decades. We also have a software house called Digius with a strong background in embedded software. And so to say, we're a one-stop shop working together to getting your devices to the market. And today we are here to talk about the regulatory affairs, which is one of Innokas' core expertise. And that's why we have Pekka here with me. So now go ahead, Pekka.
Thank you, Jenny and Emmi. So why I am talking here today, I suppose I have a deep practical knowledge of applying the various requirements in the field, such as ISO 3485, 49716, 6601, 62366, and these sorts of state-of-the-art standards. I have a couple of or almost 10 years of hands-on experience of implementing those requirements in medical device programs, and doing that also in practice as a project manager and quality and regulatory specialist, as well as usability engineer and software test engineer. So I have some knowledge and expertise about the regulation, quality assurance, and how to implement them in practice. Past 5 years in my career, I've been building up a business, a QARA business at Innokas, about €1 million consultation business, and I led a team of 15 quality and regulatory experts. Last year, I also acted as a company PRRC, or person responsible for regulatory compliance. So you could say that I pretty much know how it feels to bear a personal responsibility of really complicated things that you just barely understand. So happy to be here. Let's have a good discussion, and I hope everyone gets something out of this presentation.
Yeah, and we don't want to have an MDR lecture. Let's rather have a discussion together. What's going on? What are the pain points? So Pekka, try to remember not to go into too many details.
Okay, I'll do my best. Yeah.
Yeah, and we also hope that, you know, if you have any questions, you can use the chat or just open your mic and go ahead. So Pekka, let's start. In your own words, could you run us through what is MDR?
Yeah, sure. Just a quick sanity check whether you can see the full screen of Innokas Medical logo in the center.
Yes, we can.
Cool.
Yes, we can.
Great, thanks. Okay, so MDR. I think it's good to take a helicopter perspective at first and talk about CE marking. And let's take a product perspective for a while. So CE marking in general is just another way for manufacturers to communicate that their product is relatively safe and it's okay to be sold in the European Economic Area, right? There's a high chance that your product must be CE marked if the product happens to be, for example, a toy or a lift, explosive for civil use, machinery, measuring equipment, or so on. And medical devices happen to be in this group, in one of these product groups that needs to be CE marked before they can be sold. In other words, the CE process itself is some sort of certification for the product that it has been assessed to meet the high safety, health, and environmental protection requirements that is laid down for the product. Sometimes the assessor in CE scope in general can be the manufacturer themselves, or sometimes it's an independent body, but a commercial body. So CE marking is not obviously just for medical devices. MDR, to answer your question, is a regulation, a set of documents, which from product perspective tells you what the manufacturer need to fulfill and what the product need to fulfill before you can attach the CE marking to the product. Previously, it was MDD, or Medical Device Directive, and during last few years, there's a transition ongoing from the directive to the regulation, and I hope this is not something completely new to you. Does it make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So what's the difference between CE marking and the requirements in other markets then?
So CE marking generally is not your global passport to every market. So the approach is very different in different market areas. For example, in the US, for medical devices, there's a government-run agency, FDA. There's 18,000 people working there. And the FDA literally gives you a market clearance or market approval for your product. Whereas in EU, the CE marking is always a declaration by the manufacturer that yes, we declare that we have followed all of the rules that are laid down to that specific product group. There's lots of different approaches globally. Let's say Norway, for example, as they are not officially in the EU, they have although harmonized the MDR requirements to their national legislation. So you could say that it's roughly right to say that Norway is following the MDR requirements as they are. But maybe that's shed some light on that topic.
Yeah, all right. So there's a lot of talk about MDR. Could you please make us a little bit less scared about it?
Yeah, sure. So let's start about the basics of MDR. So it's good to understand that the MDR sets and introduces requirements for all medical devices out there. So the scope is pretty much it's a wide scope of products. Many of these requirements have been there already since 1993 in the Medical Device Directive. So the requirements of MDR mostly aren't new to the industry. But it's good to understand that if the product you are manufacturing is a medical device, i.e. it has a medical indication, medical purpose, then all of the MDR rules apply to that product. And if it's not, then none of the rules apply. So it's all about the medical indication. It's also good to note that MDR is not the only regulation or directive that might apply to your medical device product.
Mm-hmm. And how about software as a medical device or combination products? Are they included in MDR?
Yeah, that's a good point to make. So software products, they are devices as well. So it doesn't have to be embedded to a certain electromechanical thing. Standalone softwares are medical devices as well, and these rules apply. Combination products also, it's a bit more complicated thing since you also have to take the pharmaceutical legislations into account, but MDR is also applicable to the device part of combination products.
Mm-hmm. So why is it that people talk so much about MDR? What was it meant to achieve?
So you could say that there's been scandals in Europe stating back or originating in 2010 about breast implants, for example, when it was the reason why that was or reason why that happened was that back in the days in the directive, there weren't that rigor requirements for, let's say, post-market surveillance. So manufacturers who wanted to take that road were able to kind of hide evidence that the product might be dangerous to patients. And also transparency is one of the things that is meant to achieve with regulation. So transparency from manufacturing standpoint, so that the supply chains are more visible to the auditors. Transparency also to the notified body pricing and such, which has been quite an issue. All in all, the point of the MDR is to make safer products for the patients and for the clinical users. So why are people talking so much about the MDR? It hasn't been a success story, that's for sure. Some of the problems we have currently has a lot to do with the notified bodies, the bodies who need to audit and give the objective review to the evidence of safety of the product. So they are commercial actors, and currently they are fully booked. We made a questionnaire about this. From startup standpoint, especially, it seems that you have to, at some cases, be in a waiting list even to get a non-binding quote from the notified bodies. Also, some of the notified bodies also actually charge money from making a non-binding quote. So that is a problem, and that's one of the reasons why people talk so much about the MDR. It's also a completely new regulation. So when the notified bodies and manufacturers are interpreting the rules, how to apply them in practice to certain kinds of especially new technologies, and as there are no precedents available, notified bodies tend to get, let's say, over careful for not being the first one doing the interpretations. So that would be a problem when the decisions are either not made or they are made. The decisions or interpretations are done with a bit scared mindset, so to speak.
Right.
I would like to add one thing to that, Emmy. It's from business standpoint, running the business standpoint. One of the, you could say, obstacles of companies preparing themselves ready for the MDR requirements is that it's an investment, right? It's a direct cost for the product, but manufacturers tends to have a challenge of seeing the added value to the product of implementing these requirements. And I hope those positive sides I discussed earlier could have an effect on that mindset.
Yeah, well, maybe you can continue on that, because the reputation is not the most positive, but there are some positive effects.
Yeah, I think I listed a couple of them. So let's say, the transparency in supply chains, more rigor post-market surveillance requirements, and you could say the aim again would be the more safe products, but MDR should also provide a more robust and consistent system of medical devices across the EU to ensure the safety and performance. So there has been cases where in certain areas of the European Union, the rules have been interpreted differently. So did I answer to your question?
I think that's clear now.
Yeah.
So there are also things that the MDR is requiring from the notified bodies. What are those?
Yeah, so they need to be more and they have to be transparent in their pricing. So you should be able to see what it costs to buy the MDR certification service from the notified body. We did a survey. One of our experts actually wrote a blog about it. It's been shown to be a bit difficult to actually compare the prices when you actually gather the quotes and try to get the head of things. What's the actual total cost of the service? But you can see the hourly rates. You can see the workload estimations. What it costs to audit the technical file. What it costs to audit the QMS. What it costs to do the follow-up audits and such. And thanks to MDR, it's to them it's recommended to take into consideration also SMEs and first-time applicants.
I'll tell a little bit about the blog, and there was actually a question by Yuri about the time needed for the whole process. Can you change the next slide, Pekka?
Sure.
Awesome. So it can last up to 24 months. Viivi Lankinen, our QARA specialist, wrote the blog in October. And back then there were 33 notified bodies for MDR and only 7 for IVDR. I checked yesterday, and there are now 37 notified bodies designated to the MDR, and the number is expected to grow. And then you can see from the numbers that there is only a small part of medical devices that are certified to MDR in comparison to the mass of medical devices in the market needing the certification. And as mentioned, it takes quite a long time, so there's quite a gap. And according to the MedTech Europe survey results about the availability of medical devices, they found out that only a small part are MDR certified, are these first-time applicants and new products. So the effort is going more into the legacy devices. But Pekka, I also heard that MDR was recently postponed to 2028. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say just one comment on the numbers. So from there was a question about how long does it take, but some I would not like to say that majority but the significant part of the time goes to the QMS side audit, so quality management system side audit. I'm going to talk to you a bit more detailed about the quality management system when we go into the MDR Fast Track solution to these problems. But it's good to understand that it's not just auditing the technical files. But yeah, to your question, it is not completely false what you said. So MDR hasn't been postponed per se, let's put it that way. But those medical device manufacturers who have CE marked products or so-called legacy products out there may, in certain circumstances, extend their transition to MDR until 2028, should their product be of a lower risk class. For class 3 products, it's 2027. It's not that straightforward though. It's not an automation. So these manufacturers must have been started, the MDR process. Product must be free of risk, meaning that you cannot implement significant changes to the product. If you do, then automatically you have to update your documentation and evidence to comply with the MDR. Well, unfortunately, if you were to ask me, but the extension does not by any means have an effect on new products. So if you don't have a CE marking yet, you need to meet with the MDR requirements as it has been the whole time.
Yeah. In the comments, there's now Terhi saying that time is somewhat doubled compared to MDD certification process. Any comments on that?
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, enough about the troubles. How about some concrete solutions?
Yeah, and I don't know. The EU Commission gets a lot of negative comments about this, but it's never easy to implement new legislation. So at least I'm not one to blame them. It hasn't been a success, but maybe there's also too much about the negative talks. And let's stay on the positive side for the last part of the presentation. So, and I would also like to spare good time for discussion and questions. So maybe we shift gears at this stage.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have we've been aware of these kinds of issues for quite a long time already. What we use as a quality and regulatory expert, as a tool when we discuss with our customers, especially with our startup customers, is a pretty rough checklist for us to understand where the customer is within their MDR process. So just to give you a couple of examples, what you need to have in order to be MDR compliant in quote unquote near future is that you have to have a systematic process, QMS, quality management system, in place, and also that you already have an agreement, not only a quote, but an agreement in place with the notified body when the technical file or QMS audit can be started. PRRC, that's one of the changes in MDR I didn't mention, but every company needs to have a person who is, I would love to say, personally responsible. It's not that straightforward, but responsible for the responsible person of the company who needs to make sure that the MDR requirements have been followed. It's good to note that the companies need an insurance for recalls. That's mandatory. There's a rough price estimate. It varies a bit, but for the first 3 years, 100k euros direct costs from the MDR certification process, including the technical file audits, including the follow-up audits in the following years. Somebody needs to take care of this. I would say that's our message to the startup companies. And when it comes to strategic decisions, I think this is a somewhat good illustration. What are the 3 different options startup needs to take for the QARA strategy, so to speak. So you can either hire your own team and train it. You can utilize and use quality consultants. There are plenty of them out there. Seems so that also they are pretty booked currently. But using experts who have seen the process from the start to the very end is good to be utilized to as your help within the progress. So total workload will definitely be lower. And I would say using an expert in these, you could say, things that probably aren't that familiar to you or to a startup company. I have never seen a startup company who would state first that regulatory affairs is our core expertise and we build our business around it. Well, it can be like that in our case. The MDR Fast Track is going to be the topic of rest of the presentation. That's a new delivery model that we believe is the fastest and the least burdensome solution for a startup company or an SME company. I would say that there can be a very intriguing option, a strategic option, which would be located, let's say, one full display length to the right and two below, so like a dark purple. And the strategic decision would be to neglect everything and improvise, like be innovative and just don't mind about the rules. But in this, I've seen these companies personally. I would never want to work there because just having to look over your shoulder constantly to the parking lot, whether the inspector has come today. I don't want to be there. So at the bad news is that at some point, someone will take a good look on the evidence. And if you run to, let's say, gaps in your evidence too late, it's typically too late. So changes in the certification, when the time of certification comes, it's just too late and have to move on to do something else. Okay, but the MDR Fast Track. So basically, it's a delivery model, which is unique in Scandinavia, I would claim. It's done in Central Europe for quite a long time. It's a outsourced responsible manufacturer service, basically. So instead of building and managing a laborious system of your own, you can, by strategic decision, operate under an already established, validated, and active system with the proven track record. Using the experience and team of experts to take fully the responsibility of taking care of fulfilling the requirements and implementing the MDR compliance. In practice, it means that the service provider's name, in this case, Innokas name, would be in the type labels as a responsible manufacturers, and then the what we call the brand house, the one taking care of the business and the product, would be everywhere in the branding, in the manuals, and these sorts of places. It's not new to us, so we have done this with one product already in 2014. So we did it with GE Healthcare. There's also the fact that we are the responsible manufacturer. Innokas has also designed the electronics, the mechanics, and the software of this product. But on top of that, we are the responsible manufacturer. We have applied for the CE marking in EU as well as 510K in the US, and it's sold now in over 30 different countries. And it's been sold now for almost a decade now. We have gained a lot of experience with this project from let's say cybersecurity, patient data protection, and what are so it's not only the MDR or MDD. There's lots of other legislations which I don't know, could block the road if you don't know what you're doing. So our thinking of how the role split should be in this sort of delivery model would be that the brand house in this picture, the gray circle, the brand house or the company would be the one having the full ownership of the product and the intellectual property rights. So by any means, we never want to run the business for the company. Marketing, sales, distribution would be on brand houses or the customer's responsibility. Core R&D, should there be algorithms or something which is core for their technology, it's good that there's a person or a team who understand at least the core R&D. It's good that the customer, and this is typically the case, that there's the subject matter expertise from the clinical side, from the brand house, who actually understands the clinical purpose and the clinical indications of the product. Whereas the default setting would be that we take care of the compliance side, quality management system, certifications, product compliance, surveillance, CAPAs, these sorts of things, and also the country approvals. Maybe most importantly is that as we are a contract design company, as we are a contract manufacturing company, we are never after the IPRs or the product business whatsoever. Emmy, do you want me to add something?
Well, who is the MDR Fast Track for?
Oh yeah, okay. Good. Let's maybe just a quick recap on how this would work in practice. I hope this answers to that question. So again, this is an example. This is a rough simplification. There's no point to go into too deep of details how the program is run, how it's done in practice. Might seem simple. At some point, it might start to sound too complicated, but just remembering the fact that it's in the end, it's Innokas in the labels, customer taking care of the product. So if we split the product life cycle into 5 different stages, so we have let's say the analysis phase, the planning phase, implementation, launch, entering the market phase, and maintenance phase. The thing starts with a short pre-study. So we triple check that this is the right delivery model for you, and whether the risk profile of the product suits to this kind of arrangement. So to answer your questions here, Emmy, it's good to understand this is a really risky business because we actually bear the responsibility of the safety of the product. So should the product be from a higher risk class, if we're talking about implantables, class 3 products, it can be that this delivery model doesn't pay out in that instance. And should there be some elements of QMS already in place so that there's high investment already done to the operating mechanisms and quality management system in general, maybe then it's more reasonable for us to just support in establishing the whole quality management system and work in a, let's say, more traditional manner. But this is what is thoroughly analyzed, and there's a question.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of discussion in the chat right now.
Oh,
so
okay, good.
Maybe we can go back a little bit and clarify, because the first question is how does the MDR Fast Track how is it different from an EQMS? So EQMS is usually maintained by the brand house, but Innokas is offering to maintain the QMS for the brand, it seems. Comments?
Yeah, so EQMS is just some sort of electronic platform doing most of the manual maintenance of the QMS for you. So EQMS is something that we use. EQMS is something that typically companies use, but it's not how it differs from the MDR Fast Track delivery model is that you don't need an EQMS in that delivery model. The QMS or the electronic QMS from Innokas is being used as an evidence for the compliance. I hope that answers to your question. There's lots of different options out there, green light gurus and these sorts of things. We don't have an agreement with any of providers, but there's good options for EQMS platforms out there.
And I would maybe say that because Innokas is actually taking the responsibility of running everything.
Yeah.
So that's the main difference.
Yeah.
And then also there's a question, who is taking care of the manufacturing and design? So in the previous slide, we actually kind of skipped through that.
We did. And it's actually presented in green and light orange in this picture. So MDR Fast Track delivery model is not dependent on who will eventually do the design, who will eventually manufacture the product. They are optional services that we could provide, but if you already have manufacturing capabilities or you have a design and development organization, it's not mandatory, or it doesn't matter from MDR Fast Track service delivery models standpoint. Good question. Yeah.
Yeah. There are quite a few other questions as well. Maybe we go through them now. How do you handle the customer-facing process?
You would need to elaborate a bit on that.
The whole question is, since you run the QMS, how do you handle the customer-facing process? Maybe Marco can elaborate a little bit more.
Customer-facing meaning the, okay, so the end customer, if I understood it correctly.
I believe so, yes, Marco says.
Okay, good. So to be agreed, in our default model, the product distribution would be handled by the brand house, also the after sales. So how it would be agreed in practice by default, our suggestion would be that as you, as a sales organization, will be in contact with the end users, the hospitals, clinics, whatever the end customer might be and where they might be. You would be the actor who is actually making the systems and collecting the customer feedback. And this is something that will be detailed in really high precision during the pre-project, is that we create the link between our quality management system and yours, which is suitable for specifically for the distributor requirements, one of which is that you just have to make sure that the product bears the CE marking that we have manufacturers, and also how you collect the information and how the transparency to that system is made possible, so that we as a responsible manufacturer can always have a full visibility to the evidence that has been collected. But there's also a filter that those that has to do with possible patient safety side of things will be reported to us for us to analyze together. That's the default position. It can be handled otherwise, so that we would use our tools to collect the evidence. I'm not claiming that there's really sophisticated tools for that, but it can be arranged otherwise as well. Hopefully I answer the question.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Another question, if a brand already has an EQMS such as for the US market, can Innokas MDR Fast Track use the existing one?
Yeah.
Simple. And then another one, what's your bandwidth going MDR Fast Track projects doing?
So what's the bandwidth currently?
Yeah.
It's, let's say it's getting better. So the news is about from the EU Commission is actually also positive from the bandwidth standpoint, because now when it's official, it's not official yet, but when I dare to say the transition period is a fact, there might be a big change how the big product houses want to certify their products. So it's expected that a lot of the bandwidth is freed from the notified bodies, and it's then better. I cannot speak for our notified body, but from our side, we have a pretty good bandwidth in the near future and in the long run.
Then I have one good question. I think what we're asked quite often from the startups is that if you become a customer of the responsible manufacturer service, and you want to continue on your own after a couple of first years, what happens? Yeah,
so it's I would say that the agreement framework, which is really thorough, has been built upon the idea that many customers of ours does have an exit strategy. So from that standpoint, that the terms and clauses have been done and have been written so that the exit is possible almost at any point in time. It takes some time for you to prepare the readiness to claim the responsible manufacturer role, and it's a good thing that there's a flexible time, couple of months at least, so that there wouldn't be a situation that there is no responsible manufacturer for the product, because that would mean a recall for the product. But we are there to help to establish the readiness and to establish the quality management system as we go. So it's covered.
Nice. So are there some cases where MDR Fast Track is not an option?
Yeah, I would say the class implantables, the high risk products, and should there be a lot of efforts put in the QMS already, those would be, I would say, the cases. I would say from mindset standpoint, this is not I don't know, in Monopoly there's the free from jail card. I suppose that's it. So this is not that. So should you have the mindset of I don't mind about the regular, those doesn't apply me. I would say that sort of a mindset should you have. I would say keep yourself in the wellness product business and don't come to medical device business at all, because the regulations are for everyone, and the meaning of them is good. The purpose is to get safe product out there, and maybe that's where I'm going to stop. But yeah,
so how
I don't know.
about
Yeah,
does it make sense to the crowd now? What is the MDR Fast Track? Could you maybe point out some added value points for yourself? What would this service bring to you? Fast Track, I guess that gives one tip. So far, no comments. How will we pay for the Fast Track Is it paid by the hour or a cut of total sales or a fixed price or a combination?
I would say that the cost models and these sorts of things we should take offline, just for the purpose of this webinar. But I'm happy to have these discussions offline.
So Rasmus will hit you up. So how about some added value points? Faster entry to market. Does that sound good? Do you think it sounds good, Pekka?
I truly hope so. We have this is what we think. As I said, it's not that typical that the quality and regulatory expertise is the core expertise of a company or a startup. So I would say that it boils down to the fact that you can focus on your own core expertise and taking care of the boring side of things. That brings more focus to the business, to innovation, making an excellent product, marketing, brand sorts of things. So focus on those. We take care of the boring side of the things. It mitigates, I believe, the business risk, since I would say it's a huge risk to take just to rely that everything is done when the audit comes and it's not done and you have to start all over again. That's a business risk of high level, I would say. But yeah, speed to market. So it means one quality management system less, time to establish, certify, proven, already running, have been running since '94. It's going to be faster. So that's what we think.
Also our connection to the notified body is quite close.
Sure. So we already have that. We don't have to establish new connections, so to speak.
Now, a great question. How well is this suited for software as a medical device, for example, cloud service?
It's suited well for software products. If we are dealing with high risk artificial intelligence algorithms, that can be a bit iffy. The risk can be a bit too high. But first of all, the Digius team that works with the QARA team is filled with software engineers who actually knows the 62304. We have agile systems for software development, and we know the software business pretty well, software products pretty well. So
yeah, there's a continuation question. There can be a huge amount of work to verify design changes, such as in cloud-based SAMT, with many features being innovated continually. I would guess that the brand still must do all that verification, correct?
Again, to be agreed. The verification, the responsibility within those activities can be split with our software quality experts and software team, for example. So it can be a shared responsibility. We have to analyze and make decisions based on whether the verification is executed well enough, these sorts of things. But it's going to be done in really close and good cooperation. In those instances, if the software product happens to have like really many complicated interfaces and the I don't know, the interface architecture is already really complicated, then it can be so that this delivery model is not the perfect match. Then again, it's all about using our expertise to support you as a responsible manufacturer is then the way to go.
Yeah, and I think I remember you saying sometime before something about the kind of continuous changes, that there's also strategies in the development phase that can be taken into account.
Exactly. So the optimal solution for that's a really good point, Emmy. So we want to avoid product changes. So doing the software development plan, really put our efforts on that. We can probably avoid lots of unnecessary, at least significant changes to the product if we define that function X, when implemented in the near future, will not be a significant change because of these 5 things. It makes things a lot easier.
Yeah. Now we have time for more questions.
Yeah.
There's still 10 minutes left.
On my behalf, thank you for this presentation. I hope our listeners find interesting things that they could be utilized and got some answers. This was very good presentation.
Thanks. And like we said, we're very happy to talk about your specific case after the call.
So there is one hand at least. Heidi Hintsala, thank
you. Thank you very much, Pekka and Emmy, for a very interesting presentation from Centria University of Applied Sciences. I would be interested to hear some cases, reference cases shortly. Is there anything that you can mention? And I mean maybe some small startup companies.
Yeah, really good question. So we don't have a permit from our startup companies to actually tell their name. One of our first class 1 products has to do with the TENS devices and the pads that are used in them. It's going to be a class 1 product, so it's going to be self-declared by Innokas. It's a really small company, 3 or 4 people working there. And I would say that the expertise split is pretty much something that we provided as a default in the picture with the circles. And we are heading to declare the conformity well before summer. Should be in April if things go as planned. But there's lots of ifs with I don't know, material availability now. So it's not always the regulation that is keeping us from going to markets. But that I can mention. Also, the MDR Fast Track was launched, I guess it was in October last year. So we are also in the beginning. Yeah, the pilot phase is so we have pilot projects ongoing or closed, but we are still, let's say, in the beginning of this journey. So.
And I guess, Heidi, you remember we talked about the GE healthcare patient monitor,
sure.
which is how it all started.
Yeah. A little bit larger company.
I would say a little bit, not the traditional startup GE healthcare is, but yeah, thanks. Good question.
Thank you.
Do you have any more questions? I think that we have 6 minutes left.
I think there's so many of you. So are there some people who already are doing their MDR certification right now? Or everybody's more or less on the road towards it? Well, Oskari also is asking about the slides, so we'll share the slides with everybody after the presentation.
Yeah, and I think that this recording is also shared afterwards.
I'm just browsing through the chat now that I actually see it. I don't know if we covered Anne's question about clinical evidence.
Ah, good.
I think we didn't. So I just
No,
have to, yeah, let me just write. This is a really important thing. So yes, agreed that the clinical evidence requirements are much more rigorous. Okay, maybe that's more of a comment rather than an actual question, but I fully agree with you. Anna, if there's something that you want to elaborate or particular questions, I'm happy to.
Yeah, it's more of a comment.
Yep.
Because you mentioned the risk, so I think this is one of the most painful risks to go through the process. Yeah.
Exactly. And maybe to build on that, it's actually also the one of the most typical reasons I hear that the companies are actually turning their backs to EU markets and they want to start from the US markets, for example, because the burden for clinical evidence is much smaller in the US. You can enter the markets without clinical evidence should your product be close enough to the predicate product that you are comparing your safety claims towards. So that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Also, would you outline? Sorry, I was going to say, would you outline what the clinical evidence requirement would be? For example, could a small company find its own commercial IRB, have a participant set of 30 or more people and show just safety and efficacy? Or what do you think the scope of the clinical trial has to be?
Okay, so first of all,
what Satu might say.
Yeah, I'm most definitely thinking what Satu might say. So the whether it's a clinical evaluation that is required or whether there's a clinical investigation required, they are two completely different things. So if it's an investigation, we could then evaluate the size of the trials and what is the N being used at the clinical trials. The clinical evaluation which is needed for every product would have to do with literature reviews and these sorts of documents. Truth to be told, not my core expertise whatsoever. So happy to discuss further about the clinical side of things and onboarding Satu Päiväläinen to the discussions.
Yeah, Satu is the head of our clinical team. And it's a competence that we've been building now since I started, at least, quite strongly. So we have 3 clinical trials experts.
I just have one comment. Thank you for making this presentation. It was beautiful. And like Emmy said in the beginning of the presentation, that this needs to be like a discussion. And thank you, Emmy, for steering the whole process. And it was not a monologue. I really enjoyed listening to this coming from a non-MDR background. So thanks a lot, Pekka and Emmy, both of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
Very good.
Yeah, I think that if there is no questions anymore, that there is time to close this webinar, and thank you all to joining, and thank you for Emmy and Pekka for this presentation.
Maybe one question, so if possible. So how big team you have currently in Innokas Medical doing these fast tracks?
Okay, so it depends on the scope, whether it's the design, whether it's the manufacturing, whether it's the QARA only. So there's 200 plus experts working for Innokas. Currently, the QARA expert team is 15 people or 14 people, including the internal quality and regulatory team, as well as the consult team. So 14.
And are you doing the manufacturing by yourself or using subcontractors, or how the model works?
Okay, so who actually manufactures or produces the product does not have significant difference to the delivery model itself. We do have 2 factories or manufacturing sites, and 3 if you count the Helsinki. So there's 1 in Kempele, 1 in Helsinki, 1 in Tallinn. So we have also PCB lines, and we have assembly lines. Should the product be from a, let's say, high mix, low volume side? So we are not talking about, let's say, single use products which are done in millions, then we would probably have to ask some help from one of our sister companies, Ceres, but we have pretty good capabilities on also manufacturing electromechanical products at our premises. Happy to discuss about that more as well.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
So once again, thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks.
Thanks. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you.